Well, for more on Apple, we are joined this morning by the man who introduced Tim Cook to Steve Jobs and who has placed many senior executives at companies like Microsoft, Amazon, SAP, and several others. Rick Devine is the founder of executive recruiting firm Devine Capital Partners, joins us now. Rick, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Looking forward to talking with you about this. Look, first up, the shareholders rejected this proposal, right, to make more transparent at Apple this succession. As somebody who placed Tim Cook and who some people say is likely to succeed Steve Jobs, what did you make of this?
Well, I don't agree that the shareholders, that the CEO should forecast or predict who he or she believes is the next CEO of the company. I think that's going to undermine their leadership. It's going to undermine their ability to develop others in the company. And it also eliminates a level of flexibility the CEO needs to be able to respond to M&A activity, other scenarios in the global markets that could affect who the CEO of the company should be. And I think it would actually damage the senior leadership making a capability the CEO has in developing talent there. I think it'll have the adverse. It would have an adverse effect, and just the opposite, I think, of what these shareholder groups are looking to achieve.
But Rick, I mean, clearly for other companies, though, it does work for them to name a successor, at least to name a few successors, and have shareholders know that. I'm thinking about, for instance, GE. But why would this not work at Apple? What is it about Apple that just doesn't work?
Well, I think GE is an unusual situation. Organizationally, they have these division presidents, and you have 4 or 5 people who have a title of president, and Jeff Immelt, was one of those.
Right.
And it's not difficult to imagine one of those presidents becoming. So there, in effect, you have 4 or 5 candidates, and you're not forecasting one to the world. But when a company picks a COO, for example, as Steve Jobs did with Tim years ago, I think that's pretty foretelling. Or if you look at the news with John Chambers making Gary Moore the COO, I think that's also foretelling of an inclination to make that person the leading candidate for succession. And
you've said, Rick, though, I think that Steve Jobs, though, is slowly but surely broadcasting to the rest of the world that Tim Cook eventually will replace him. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah. I think he's made it pretty clear. I mean, not only did he make Tim the COO of the company, but he also, he's been on the cover of Fortune with Steve. He was the interim CEO when Steve took a leave, an illness leave prior. So I think he's made it pretty clear to the industry without damaging the morale of the rest of the management team at Apple by saying it is Tim, publicly. I think you need to leave hope for the other members of the senior management team that maybe they have a chance as well. And also from a recruiting standpoint, you can imagine the damage it would create to the senior leadership team if every recruiter in the world knew that. Let's take an example at Oracle. If Larry Ellison said it's Safra Catz as the next CEO of Oracle, right. What's that going to do for Thomas Kurian? What's that going to mean now for Mark Hurd, right?
Right, the others waiting in line, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You want to leave everyone, in Larry Ellison, Steve Jobs, these guys want to maintain flexibility to react to the changing business climate and make the decision at the right time.
Rick, at the time when you had placed Tim Cook, though, did you get any signals from Steve Jobs that he was actually looking at him, even though they had good chemistry, looking at him as a possible replacement?
No, in 1998, Steve was very focused on one thing, which was to resuscitate what was a very ailing company in Apple. The company at the time was not participating in the internet trend, the build-to-order innovation that Dell pioneered. You couldn't buy a Mac online. The company's market share was eroding. There was comments and criticism about the company. Management left. It was a pretty dire situation, and Steve was doing very well with Pixar. Okay. His primary objective was to bring in a person that can help him fix the supply chain. As we all know about Steve, his infamous personality, he's an incredibly focused executive, right. And he's very operational when he needs to be, and he just wanted to fix that supply chain. He wanted consumers to be able to order a Macintosh computer online, on a website, and you just couldn't do that in 1998, and it was really frustrating to him.
And Rick, before I leave you, is there anything about Tim Cook that is out in the press that is inaccurate, or anything about Tim Cook that we don't know about, that you know about, that you want to say?
I think he's pretty well understood individual. I mean, he's a stoic personality. He's a steady hand. He's a consistent. His personality is he's very stable and consistent. And I think he will be, if he's made CEO of Apple, I think he'll become like Bob Iger became a great CEO for Disney today. Even though Walt Disney is only walking the halls spiritually, I think you'll have a scenario there where Steve Jobs will always be the spiritual leader of Apple, and Tim Cook will be able to carry on quite effectively in his absence.
I like the way you put that. So basically, Tim Cook would be the Bob Iger of Apple then. Rick, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
I appreciate it. Rick Devine of Devine Capital Partners.